I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV Velocities in Music, the best kept secret in music reviews. Back in July, an electronic music artist named Kieran Hebden, also goes by the alias Four Tet in electronic music, came out with an album called Beautiful Rewind. This is his first, it's his 7th album, but his first in 3 years, I think. His previous album, Tom, help me with the name here.
There's Lovin' You.
There's Lovin' You, which had the track Sing, which is one of my favorite electronic tracks of all time on it. It's been 3 years since that album came out and since we've had a chance to review anything by Four Tet. So now Beautiful Rewind is out, and we get to hear Four Tet kind of experimenting with his craft a little bit here. Tom, what are some of the differences between Beautiful Rewind and There Is Lovin' You?
Well, I think there are quite a few. I think they're very different albums, and they really see Four Tet approaching different aspects of electronic music. Whereas There Is Lovin' You was a little bit more ambient, a little bit more about slow builds, and building that emotional foundation of the songs through the kind of subtle ambient layers. This one is a little bit more beat-based, and it's a little bit more sample-based.
Absolutely. What I really heard is that every single song has a very defined beat, and then there's lots of layers of melodies on it, and he's just playing with the sound. And then a lot of times what you'll have on this album is that the song will start, you'll have, like 3.5 minutes of song, and then the song will just shift ever so slightly at the end, and then kind of just as an outro trail off.
Yeah. One thing that you still have here that's present in all of Four Tet's music is just a great attention to detail.
Absolutely.
He does a wonderful job of while you mentioned there is a lot of repetition, I don't feel like the songs get stale. Now, these even has a lot shorter track lengths than his previous work did, previous album I'm referring to specifically. So I think that caters to it a little bit more because these songs don't build quite as much. As you mentioned, they do kind of go in different directions from time to time. I'm thinking particularly of track 5, Cool FM, which kind of cuts out in the middle, comes back in with some of the same elements. Yeah, bringing in some new stuff like that. And it helps to kind of mix it up when you have something that sounds familiar and something that's new. Similarly, track 8, Aerial, the longest track on the album at just about 6 minutes, I think that does a wonderful job of moving. So you can tell that this guy knows that when he makes a longer track, he knows how to justify it.
Absolutely. And one thing that both, I would say, his other, brainy electronic music counterpart, Caribou, does, as well as Four Tet, is these guys both focus on doing, whether it's a sample of some sort of vocals, and usually it's a good vocal clip that he samples, and you'll hear lots of repeated vocal clips using vocals or samples of vocals looped as an instrument, which really, it's just a really cool approach to adding another layer of melody to one of these tracks. And it gives it kind of a relatable, dynamic, emotional connection with the listener. So I really like how he sprinkles that throughout the album. To me, Beautiful Rewind was much more about the ideas, and there was a lot of different moods he presents on this album. Where I feel like There Is Lovin' You and some of the other songs, I've heard him, like, whether it's a remix. I mean, this guy has remixed every major indie song that's come out in the last 3 years. I feel like, specifically, I know Radiohead. He loves Radiohead, obviously, so he remixes like every one of their songs. But Beautiful Rewind is all about the different moods. I hear a lot of Moby influence. In fact, there's a lot of songs on this album that just sound like they could have been on Moby's latest release. And to me, though, the ideas aren't as fleshed out. I mean, because of how he chose to structure these tracks, you really just have one idea that goes on for 3.5 minutes, and then he does choose to go through some sort of outro process. But then the idea is just over, and you're on to the next idea.
The shorter, more underdeveloped tracks really do feel just more like sketches. And especially considering that, like I said, this is a little more sample based. You have those kind of cut up vocal samples, which has been fairly popular in electronic music for the last decade at least.
Absolutely.
And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it's just, it's something that you hear around there. So I get to thinking about how people choose to execute that kind of production and sampling. So, when I hear, though, the same sample just kind of being used over and over again in the same way rhythmically, I feel like there's just opportunity to expand that idea.
Absolutely.
And I don't think it's a huge knock against this album because what this guy does, he does really well, but I just think he could have taken it a little bit further, taken it to the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I do think the second half of this album is a little bit stronger than the first half, with Aerial being a clear highlight track. Both you and I picked that. We also both picked track 10, Unicorn.
That was a great one.
It is. It has all these very colorful melodies, almost kind of referenced Enya a bit. It just had this new age kind of atmosphere and feel to it. And it was a very much a departure in what you've heard up until that point.
Yeah.
And it was the right thing at the right time. The last track, Your Body Feels, adds layers of saxophone and then some other like almost MIDI sax in there too.
Definitely.
It's just a cool way of closing the album, and really made a statement as the album kind of rings out at the end. This album, I enjoyed it when it's on. It just never blew me away because it has so many of those sketches that aren't quite fully developed. This album was really interesting. I enjoyed listening to it, but I may not come back to it quite as much because it never made that big dynamic statement I always wanted. That I felt that There Is Love in You made with Sing. I mean, and Sing was the clear track there, and it had that signature punch that kind of blew it away. This, not quite at the same level. I'm going to go 76.
I'm going 76.
So mid 70s. It's a little bit below the average score I think we give on this, which isn't to say that this is a C. We don't do grades. I mean, I would say that any album in the mid to upper 70s is a solid record and probably worth your guys' time if you're into this genre of music or this style, or have listened to Four Tet before and gotten something out of it. Beautiful Rewind is probably an album you'll find interesting. May not be your favorite, but worth a listen or two.
Yeah.
Please listen to it and leave us a comment. What was your experience at www.velocitiesmusic.com or youtube.com/velocitiesmusic. As always, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and let us know what albums you'd like to see us review on this channel. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, moving music critique forward.